Yeah, hello guys. We are very, very excited to be here, and we have something very interesting to show you.
We sure do.
Yeah, that's Adam Go applied to an iPad Pro or any mobile device, but specifically now looking at it from the iPad point of view, to be a home-to-base, H2B is what we call it, a home-to-base workstation. And why we're so excited about it is that essentially all the value that you have from Adam 1, all the value that you have from Adam Go, now tailored specifically to a home-to-base secured workstation.
That's right.
And I think we're going to do short little videos about this. So by all means go and hunt for the specific topic that you want to, and we'll try to keep them really short. There's just really so much to say. This one really is just to give you guys a quick overview of what this is all about, and then we'll drill into the details later. So in short, we're dealing with a bright web capable, but bright web enforced protected device. And so the quick one-liner about that: if you can press a reset button on the internet right now and decide what you want to be on the internet and what you want your device to connect to, that's essentially what it means. So you're in a default denial policy using AI for anything that gets unblocked and gets allowed for this device to connect to, and the power of Don't Talk to Strangers, where you have zero traffic leaving this device, whether it's the machine wants to go there, or whether the user wants to go there, or whether malware, or it doesn't matter what, anything peer-to-peer wants to connect. If it's not going through the front door, that connection is not going to happen.
Exactly.
So in short, just let's talk a little bit about how it worked, David. Yeah.
Well, first of all, as you see here, this is not just for show. You know how sometimes you see like marketing stuff where they gracefully hide all the wires? There are no wires to hide here. This literally is how it is, okay? And we are building on good Apple solid fundamentals with all the battery and an iPad and so forth, with the wireless keyboard and wireless mouse that goes for days. And so you truly finally have an experience and a setup that is exactly what you would expect it. And it looks exactly as you're seeing it here, no different. So how it works is basically this. When the iPad launches for the first time since a factory reset, it waits to first check in with Apple. If you have started up an iPad or an iPhone before, you notice as activation. During that activation time, this iPad checks in with Apple, and Apple says, "Oh, thanks for checking in. I see you have a serial number." And that serial number, by the owner of the product, says it is going to grab this set of configuration with these policies. And there's no way you can skip it, because until it gets those configuration, you cannot get any further steps along the way in terms of using the iPad. So once it grabs that configuration basically is where our platform starts. So we'll show you some use cases in this video and other videos as well to show you that it truly is a way for you to have the peace of mind that the device can only do what you tell it can do, and absolutely nothing else.
Yeah, and I love that you're going there, because really the most important question from all of this is, what's the consequences of the technology, right? Technology is technology, right? But when you start looking at, okay, if I do this with the tech, then this is the consequence. If I do this with the tech, then this is the consequence. And that's really what we want to drill down to. And in short, a bright web enforced device gives you security, like by orders of magnitude more secure than any other device that you've used before, okay? And we'll drill into more details with that. And then the other important thing is for reducing IT support overhead. And essentially, like you mentioned earlier when we were just chatting through this, you're essentially eliminating the additional IT load for having people work remotely, okay?
That's right. And this is really important because we actually talk to IT support teams on a regular basis. And guess what their number one requirement is? Especially during COVID-19, these IT teams have been overloaded with work.
Yeah.
And their number one request when you ask what pain can we take away, they say, I am overburdened with support. Now the people have to work from home and will probably stay working that way. So that is their number one request. Reduce my IT support overhead.
Right. And then, and even like depending on whatever is going to change with culture after this, event took place, there's going to be shifting. I think permanently in the way that we work. But even if they weren't, okay, having a device that is mobile that someone can work from, now suddenly it doesn't matter that the device is mobile. It doesn't matter that the device is not at the office anymore, right? Yeah. Because of the way that it works, that device still is at the office and has the protection that you have at the office, actually beyond what you would have had at the office. And the other thing that I think is important is that the protection is enforced. So even if you have someone, a user, making a mistake, like not switching on a VPN that you're telling them to do so, or you have this elaborate security policy, do this, this, and this, and this, and you're hiding behind the security policy just to cover your own butt with liability. This enforces all of those policies, and the user cannot willfully or mistakenly remove it. It's locked onto this device. So now you're saying, in the past, it wasn't really possible to have a truly secure device. Now, you have a secure device. The security policy is enforced by technology. You're not relying on the person to protect themselves anymore. And that's huge, okay? And then the other, I think, value just from working, when you're working, the environment that you're working or the screen where you're working in, stuff that pop up and pop-ups and ads and whatever, right? All of that stuff you have to keep in mind because this is a mobile, personal designed device.
Right.
But with the ADAMGO home-to-base configuration, none of those things exist.
Right.
You basically built a workstation the way you want it to be. If you want Messenger to be on there, great, it can be on there. If you don't want that to be on there, it will not be on there. If you want YouTube there, it's not there. Or if you want it, if you don't want it, you can completely choose it. You can even run schedules as to what is where.
This is super important, especially for those that already understand that the life hackers types that basically recognize that we can easily be distracted.
Right.
They're like, give me an environment where I don't have those distractions. Right?
Yeah, like
this is perfect for that as well.
On this guide that we have here, I mean, if we just have a quick look at the apps, and we'll do a more in-depth video on that specifically. Essentially, these should be the only things. There is no App Store on this one. There's no YouTube on this. And even if you were to go to YouTube through Safari, YouTube doesn't exist for this device right now.
Right.
Again, the power of the Bright Web, where you decide for your organization or for an individual what the internet is for them. Does YouTube exist for them? Yes or no, right? Does malware exist for them? Yes or no? Does ads exist for them? Yes or no? And
some of these things you can't. Actually, all of them you can choose. Most of them you would choose the right way, right?
Yeah,
but
sure.
Yeah, I don't think that you want to have the option of having malware exist. But with YouTube, that is the case.
Right.
You have many roles in companies where YouTube does not serve a functional need.
Right.
So it just serves as a distraction. Well, let's just
But for
not have it exist.
for some, it's needed, right?
Absolutely. Some people live on YouTube, right? Especially if you're learning how to do something that you haven't done before. It's a fantastic resource.
Right. But in general, I think for the niche of the home to base, probably I think we're going to see very little use of stuff like YouTube or anything else that can be distracting. Right. And I think, so we're specifically focusing this now on the potential that's unlocked through the new iPadOS and the ADAMGO stack, the H2B security stack. But this is also possible to do on Windows?
This is also possible to do on Windows with what's called an always-on VPN. And so it's the same idea where the device, the moment it reaches out to the internet, it builds that tunnel back to the base and it's good to go.
Okay.
But there's also something really important here that is going to really satisfy the needs of IT support teams that tend to have two needs sort of combined in one. Now that we have so many people working from home, and then your workplaces provide a VPN, that's a full VPN, so all the traffic is now going through corporate infrastructure very quickly we saw that corporate infrastructure for VPN was overloaded. They had to buy more licenses, they had to buy more bandwidth, and they just couldn't sustain it. This addresses that too, because you now have a full VPN from the endpoint's perspective, but a split VPN from the corporate's perspective. And we can go into more detail on how that's actually possible, but this is exactly the answer that IT teams are looking for to reduce the stress on their VPN infrastructure.
Right. So let's have a quick look over here, just to give us a quick overview. What does this work environment actually look like for someone?
So this device, for example, could or might not, wouldn't have to have a password, but it could have a password. So in our case, we have tied it to a Face ID.
Well,
right?
I would say it would have to have a password.
Well, it depends on the use case. Let's say that your use case is that this thing only has an RDP client and nothing else. And you have your RDP session or your remote desktop services session using a hardware key. Well, in that case, there's nothing to protect on the iPad because it's only got the client, and separately it's going to need authentication.
Right.
So it's possible.
Right.
So the one particular use case might be that this device needs to be certainly secured from an endpoint perspective, but it needs to be able to check back into the office environment. So as you can see here, I'm using an iPad, but I have an external mouse, and my external mouse is connecting a Windows computer here. And this is my Office Windows environment. And so from here, I have full access. So if I quit and I exit out of here, let me just log out. This is just one particular sample. I'm going to sign out of Windows. And when I sign out, I'm basically at my desktop of my iPad. And all I did here was just launch the Microsoft Remote Desktop app and nothing else.
Right.
And it is down here on the taskbar. Right. And so here, if you're familiar with Microsoft Remote Desktop, there is this one computer, rdp.internal.adamnet.works. Guess what? That's not accessible from anywhere in the world except from the AdamGo exit point, where this device is VPNing into. So now I just double click on it, and it immediately connects back to my Windows, logs me in, and I now have my Office environment at the base being presented on this screen here on this iPad. And I have full keyboard mouse functionality just as if I'm at the office. This is one use case where now this is the Windows environment that a typical IT team would manage in a remote desktop server. Or maybe it's an Azure cloud where you have already completely virtualized into the cloud environment, but you want to make sure that access is secured. This is one particular use case. Another use case might not be necessarily that it's Windows-based. Another use case might just be that you want to have a very secure Zoom environment. So if we log out of our remote desktop session and go back to our desktop, we do have Zoom available here. And so we could simply join a Zoom meeting here.
Or if you don't see that Zoom is secured, then it could be Jitsi or whatever.
That's right.
Like, I mean,
whatever you choose.
Yeah, so Jitsi's on here too.
Jitsi would be another way that if you're running your own internal Jitsi server so that you're absolutely not using a public cloud environment at all, and you want to be super secure, and now you are in control of the keys that connect it back and forth, well, you can do that by running Jitsi instead.
Right.
Let's say this is a finance person, and all this finance person does is run spreadsheets and access TD Canada Trust, right? So we have the TD Canada app installed, and now this person has secure access to TD. Will always come from the same source, and TD will never see this person as roaming from site to site and ask for re-authentication. It is super secure as the bank allows you to get, right? And so you can imagine any sort of use case. At the end of the day, if there is something else that needs to be available in terms of functionality, you can always go back to, all right, let's deploy a Windows-based app if that's what's required, but the way we're going to deploy it is using the secure method. So those are a couple of use cases and how you can utilize this exact same platform for different types of roles that at the end of the day need to be secured, convenient, no IT support needed, and it just works.
Right.